Welcome to UNAM Chicago's CAFÉ EXPRESSO, a space for bilateral conversations with people from all walks of life. Tune in to Spanish Public Radio and follow us on social media. And now your host, Alberto Foncerrada.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Alberto Foncerrada, and I am your host. Welcome to another edition of CAFÉ EXPRESSO, a program of UNAM Chicago in alliance with Spanish Public Radio. Today, I'd like to welcome Alejandro Valerio. Alejandro Valerio is a practice leader in a firm that advises Fortune 500 companies, multinational firms. So welcome, Alejandro.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, Alejandro, let's get to business. I know that your firm advises several issues. You have to wear different hats every time you talk. So why don't you help me just talk about what do you guys do, and we'll get into the business of what's happening, or how do you foresee the relationship between Mexico and the U.S.
Sure. Thank you. Well, first of all, let me tell you that Mexico for me is a passion. I have the fortune to work with Mexico now, but I have read a lot about Mexico maybe for the last 20 years or so, starting with the history or the great book written by Enrique Krauss, Biografía del Poder, Biography of Power. And now what I do, I work in a firm called Frontierview, advising multinationals, 500 that operate in Mexico. So we are a global firm based in Washington, D.C., with office in London and also in Singapore. And we cover from Washington, D.C., the whole Americas. In my case, I cover the practice for Mexico and Central America, and we advise companies in terms of the macroeconomic, the business outlook, and the risk, and how to mitigate those risks, and also, most importantly, how to assess the market in terms of opportunities, which Mexico remains one of the most attractive markets across emerging markets in the world.
You are originally from Dominican Republic, right?
I am originally from the Dominican Republic. I have a background in law, but also interdisciplinary. By that, I mean also in international affairs, public administration, and economics too, as well.
Okay. Now, Alejandro, let's get to business. How do you see the outlook, I'm sorry, on the relationship between Mexico and the U.S.? As you probably know, well, we're celebrating 200 years of diplomatic relations. So how do you see where the relationship's standing today in all these broad areas? I mean, you can give us like a general scope on how you think we're doing in terms of economically. I know that there's a lot of challenges on migration. Security Sure. has been a big deal. So just like the big picture, how do you see the outlook?
Sure. Well, first of all, the U.S.-Mexico bilateral relationship is one of the most important worldwide, and one of the most fascinating in terms of when you see that the asymmetry between both countries, right? And between both countries also, they do have, to your point, Alberto, different issues, security, trade, economics, cultural relationship that actually they just have become more integrated, in the last year. So we can start and break it by part. So first of all, when you think about trade and economics, the U.S. continues to be the most important trade and economic partners of Mexico. And that actually just became more acute after the NAFTA, and now with the USMCA, the NAFTA 202, after President Trump and Lopez Obrador and the Prime Minister of Canada signed the agreement. That said, for Mexico too, a lot of people do not know that, but Mexico surpassed China last year again and became the #1 trading partner of the U.S. So it's actually quite important to what is happening in Mexico when you think about supply chain, or when you think about where the Americans are getting their goods, in food or other key items like electronics, for that matter. So on one hand, when we think about trade and economics, I mean, the relationship is quite tight. It's going to continue to become, it's going to continue to be a key driver of the relationship in the years to come, regardless who are in the White House or who are, in the presidential palace in Mexico. When you think about migration, I mean, that's a thorny issue, as you know, and as everyone knows, just recent data came out, like, the apprehension in the southwestern border recorded a level unprecedented last year. So that means actually more migration flows have continued to come. But what is interesting is not only for Mexico, but mostly from the northern triangles, like from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and going through Mexico, which actually create a different dynamic that is beyond the scope of the US and Mexico relations. So that issue is going to continue there. We can talk more if you want about that. And then there is also the other part, which I think it's quite promising when we think about culturally speaking, and even, of course, academic exchanges. The US continues to receive a lot of Mexican students at the top in terms of, like, elite institutions, and as well, there is a major interest in terms of where is Mexico heading to, and what is going on in Mexico when we think about here at the think tank or academic institutions. So all in all, if we can summarize, it's like this: the economic and trade relationship and the geographical position definitely dictate the trends between both countries, and then from then on trickles down across the board, from security to the academic to culturally, and basically all the bilateral exchanges that rule country dynamics between countries.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you touched upon student exchanges. There's a lot of work to be done there. I know that there's a lot of students that come here, but we need more students also from here to go to Mexico, and that's part of the challenges that we're facing. But yes, now, you covered a lot in those few minutes, but there's a whole set of topics that we could just go on and deserve like special programs each. And I've seen your website, and you have like different segments where you cover more in depth each one of them. In terms of the security perceptions, you being in DC, what do you see when people talk about Mexico? Do we still have that bad reputation where, like, incidents are happening and they just like media blows it out of proportion sometimes? And do you see that in DC? Is it the case these days?
Well, definitely there is a major concern, I would say, that with the security situation in Mexico. When you see the debates here in Washington at the the level of the policymakers, and by that, of course, is related by the evolution of the organized crime, like drug trafficking, and then of course the trafficking at the border level, and that actually the spillover. As well, we have seen that also the a thorny issue between the current administration in Mexico and the U.S. government with the civil lawsuit that it was filed here by the foreign minister, Marcelo Ebrard, that actually has gained support by some of the advocates here in the U.S. Against guns, to put it like this, or try to curtail, like, the access to certain weapons. So I would say the following: at the policymaker level and at the legislative and executive power, definitely there is a concern with the issue with the organized crime, and then of course with some unfortunately incidents that has happened in key tourist destinations like in Yucatan, in Playa del Carmen, that this narco violence also has spilled over in tourist resources, and then of course to what you make that it gets blown out in the media. So that's one item I would say that is still a massive concern. But also on the other hand, I think it's important to bear in mind that Mexico, although it has a lot of security situation, dire security situation, if we can use that term, it is still a country that it has a lot to offer. And the issue would be like moving forward, like how both nations can work together so they can mitigate it, the security risk. But at the same time, they can keep expanding, the trade and economic relationship that they just have become stronger and stronger with the years pass.
For sure. The trust issue. The trust issue is a big one. You talked about a little bit about the disruptions that we've seen in supply chains and all these things. Energy is a big issue now. How do you feel what's happening in Mexico? I know that there has been some eyebrows raising because of the reforms made by President López Obrador or his party that he wants to go ahead with. How do you foresee this climax now and the climate in Washington? Because the trust issue has been a big one, and I don't know. Do you feel? I mean, your firm monitors also investments and all these things with the 500 big ones. Is there big reason for concern in this issue?
Well, there is. I mean, I put it like this. Yes, there is concern, and we have seen that already. It's not only, across multinational, but across the private sector too in Mexico. What you refer to the electricity reform or the energy reform that the López Obrador administration proposed, late Q3 last year, like in September, early October of last year, that it has generated uncertainty in the market because it would be a rollback from the path of Mexico back in 2014 that opened up the energy market. But the issue is that this reform, if it's enacted as it was conceived by the government, it will have ripple effects across different sectors. And we have seen that after the shock of the COVID-19 shock back in 2020, the weakest link of the economy in Mexico continues to be the investment. And if there is no certainty of there is like this environment that there is no guarantee for the rules and these contracts, then it's going to continue to take a toll in the investment climate and then putting more pressure in the operating environment overall in Mexico. That said, to your point about how in Washington, D.C., this thing is generating more noise. We know that in the U.S. now we are in a hyper-polarized environment. But if one thing that unifies Democrats and Republicans in Capitol Hill, it's their opposition to this reform. And I think it has been conveyed to the López Obrador administration with a letter that it was signed by, I think, 38 to 44 senators. And then also recently with the Secretary of Energy of the Biden administration that visited the López Obrador government and President López Obrador, and they expressed their concerns. And not only for the reform, but also for the impact in terms of the renewable sector, which is the one that I would say is bearing the brunt of this reform.
Got it. There's a lot of food for thought. I don't know if you want to add anything else that you think we left behind a bunch of stuff. But anyways, I don't know what do you think the outcome of this year looks like? First year of the Biden administration. Would you say it was a good year? It was a so-so year? And what do you think is going to happen in 2022?
Do you mean for the U.S.-Mexico relationship or for the U.S. for the Biden? Yeah.
No, pretty much Mexico-U.S. relationships in general. I mean, what are the ups and what are the downs and what are the doubts that you think we should keep an eye on?
Sure. I would say like this. I think we should keep an eye on the tension around the energy reform and see what is going to happen. I think even though if the government tried or passed in the Congress, the constitutional reform is going to be a protracted legal battle inside and outside Mexico. Most likely it's going to trigger a panel within the USMCA treaty. So that's one issue. Also, I would say if the migration flows continue to increase, we will see the Biden administration also requesting, to put it like this, mildly, more help from the López Obrador administration in terms of curtail these migration flows that is taking a toll in terms of the Biden administration and the Democrats' hope to win or to retain the control in the Congress this year. The midterm election, as you know, we head into in November. And then on the other hand, I would say, I think besides those issues, in terms of trade and economics, the US and Mexico are going to continue the relationship, which it remains quite importantly, not only for the health of the Mexican economy, but for the North America cluster overall. So there is diplomacy and then these issues behind that are going to be, tackled by both. But remarkably, I think both governments, they will find a will to tackle these issues that is beneficial for both countries, because there is a lot of stakes here, Alberto, when we think about, especially in terms of numbers, trade, and dollars.
You're absolutely right. Alejandro, thank you very much for these minutes that you gave us. You gave us a kind of like a bigger picture. I'm sure we'll be talking again because there's a lot of issues to be covered and not enough time. But I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And, stay warm there in Chicago.
Absolutely. And to my audience, thank you very much. This has been another edition of Café Expresso, a program of UNAM Chicago in alliance with Spanish Public Radio. Until next time.